Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Business Innovators Radio. This is your host, Constant Taylor. Today we have a very special guest on the show, and they're going to share some very exciting information with us. So, if you're looking to increase your personal and professional effectiveness, then you've come to the right place. Our special guest today is Marsha Egan. Marsha has been speaking professionally for 15 years, and the content that she primarily speaks on is the interpersonal side of success, time management, leadership development, getting along with others, and networking. She's spoken both nationally and internationally as well, and is based out of Nantucket, Massachusetts. Her latest book is called Inbox Detox and the Habit of Email Excellence. Marsha, that's quite a bio. Welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here.
And we're glad to have you. I would like to kick off the show by asking you if you could tell the listeners a little bit about your speaking business and how you help your clients become more successful and effective in what they do.
Whoa, that's a tall order.
You can handle it.
It's very interesting because I never sought out to become a professional speaker, but at a certain point in my life, I realized that I had information and motivation that a lot of people were looking for and or needed, and I then started speaking not professionally, but for free. And the more I spoke, the better I got, and people started to offer to pay me to do it. So I actually thought I could become a professional speaker. And that was, believe it or not, 15 years ago. And so I have been doing that for the last 15 years. And in addition to that, it has spawned another part of my business, which is personal and professional coaching individually and with groups, with people who are interested in those subjects.
Okay, so let's start with personal and professional coaching. Now, is that something, how do you start with that? Is there an initial assessment of the individual skills? How do you engage that, and how do you work through them to make them more effective?
Coaching is a relatively new profession in the last 10 to 20 years, and there are a lot of people out there who are stuck in situations, who are having difficulty getting to the next level, either in their businesses or in their corporations or in their lives in general. And the coaching process is essentially working with your clients to help them discover their potential, which is usually a lot more than they expect of themselves. And so it can be a really powerful and motivating process to go through coaching with someone who understands the whole concept of coaching. I have gotten my certifications in the coaching arena. I'm a professional certified coach, which is granted by the International Coach Federation, the primary credentialing organization. And what we do is we work with our clients to help them achieve their goals. Well, number one, to become clear on their goals, and then to start working towards achieving them more, better, faster, happier, and that kind of thing.
Okay. So how often do you connect with your clients? And is it monthly, weekly, or as needed?
Well, one of the things about having an excellent working relationship with a client is that you do have regular contact. It's not like, hey, I'm going to call my coach when I'm really in trouble. And so when I start working with a client, I like to encourage them to commit to 3 months of working with me, because it's a little hard to get to know the client well, help them establish their goals, and start working on their goals without some continuity. And so Normally, I work with them either 2 or 3 times a month, and I have some clients that have been with me over, I think my longest one is now 12 years. And there's some that come for just 3 months, and then there's everything in between.
Do you have a personal success story that you would like to share about one of your clients without mentioning the client's name or the organization?
Sure. One of my clients was a middle to senior level executive in the financial services industries. She lived in New York City. Her family lived in Seattle. Her goal was, in working with me, was to move back to Seattle by a certain age, and it was pretty much a 5-year window. And we worked at this generally and specifically, and it's amazing what happens when you set a goal, because she actually, it was somewhat circuitous, because she took a promotion to go to Boston, which didn't sound like it was getting her to Seattle, but it actually enabled her to get to Seattle faster, because what she was taking on in Boston made her more marketable. And by her sharing the fact that she wanted to work her way towards Seattle, she essentially made it in less than 5 years. She made it in 3.5.
Wow.
And so that's the power of articulating the vision and actually sharing it with other people. So that was a great success story.
Yeah, that is very, very inspiring. Now, what are some of the problems that your clients face, and how do you help them work through those?
There are a number of different kinds of problems, and it might be what you're asking me is why do people hire a coach? Why do people come to work with a coach? Many times it's because they've experienced some form of pain. Maybe not horrific pain, but being overlooked for a promotion, or not getting and exceed standards in their ratings, or just saying, I wanted to be moving up in this organization faster than I am. And so that prompts people to look for resources that can help them do that. And so that's what draws people to the coaching arena. And one of the things about coaches is that they are unfiltered. Most people have a best friend, they have colleagues, they have spouses, they have family. Many of those have their own filters. As an example, let's just say the person realizes he or she needs to move to Chicago to take on more responsibility, but the spouse may not want to move to Chicago, so her filter about that whole decision may not be as useful as someone who's trained in being non-filtered. And so that's one of the values of working with a coach. But I would tell you that one of the things that shows up in just about every client is a challenge with self-confidence. And I've worked with some very high-level executives, presidents of companies, and everyone in between, who, there are a lot of people who say, I'm scared, or I don't know if I can do this, but they don't have anyone to admit it to. They can't admit it to their spouse. They can't admit it to their board of directors. They can't admit it to their subordinates. And so the area of self-confidence is one of the common threads that people who work with coaches, I think everybody I've ever met has had some challenges with self-confidence. I have, for sure. And,
Absolutely.
And a lot of times coaches will work with the client to get them to be not dependent on the coach, but to become dependent on themselves for how they believe in themselves.
So it sounds like there's a component of being a therapist and a psychologist wrapped into coaching.
No.
Okay. Thank you for the correction. Thanks for the unfiltered feedback.
Yes. This is where clarification is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, very few coaches are licensed psychiatrists or psychologists. Coaching is about going forward. Psychiatry many times is about what's happened in the past and how you're dealing with it and how you're adjusting to the fact that your parents never paid attention to you as a child, or some horrific thing may have happened to you that you need to kind of clear out before you can move forward. Coaching is forward focused, and what really good coaches do is the stake is in the ground today. And where are you today? Okay, so you are a manager at this level in your company, and what's your goal? The goal is to become a director by 3 years and a vice president by 6 years, something like that. And now we know the target, and then we work on the strategies to get there. Coaches in their training are given a lot of training on what is a psychiatric issue and what is not. and in your intake and as things evolve, if there are issues that you know or you have the gut feel that this person should be working with a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist, it's time to make that recommendation. So it is not, it may sound that way, but it's really more forward focused.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry for the correction.
No. This is very good, because the listeners and myself, we need to understand the distinction of exactly what you're bringing to the table, and it makes so much sense. I'm a big sports guy, and you're in Massachusetts, and I'm a big Patriots and Tom Brady fan, but Coach Belichick doesn't care that the wide receiver, was neglected by his dad, at the age of 3 or 4. He just needs him to produce today. So it makes perfect sense. Now, what are some of the misconceptions that are, that some of your clients or people have with some of the work you do with coaching and in other areas, and how do you dispel those?
Misconceptions. Well, one of the things that's really, really important in working with a client is to determine whether they are willing to change. Some people come to coaches for validation, and that is usually not useful, because if they've had the pain of being overlooked for a promotion or a disappointment in their work or in their life, usually it requires people to try new things rather than to have the coach say, you did it all right, it's everybody else that's wrong. And so it's important to distinguish when you're working with a client that they are willing to try new things. And so the coach really doesn't do it for them, but they help the person know and understand that they're going to have to do some work on themselves, try some new things. And it can usually be very motivating. People can get into routines that may not serve them well. And if they can get out of their mindset and try new things, it can actually be energizing.
Okay. Let's shift to the interpersonal side of success. What are some of the main components in that particular subject?
Well, one of my favorite expressions is the soft stuff is the hard stuff. and so you can have people who are so good at coming up with tasks and developing strategies and business plans and procedures that they forget or don't do real well with the people side of making all of that work.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I like to challenge people with is think of a railroad and railroad tracks, and you need 2 tracks for that locomotive to get wherever it wants to go. One is the task, and the other is the people. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who are good at one, but not the other. And for the business to move forward, they have to be going forward at the same rate is not the right word, but at the same level
mm-hmm.
and the same amount of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we spend a lot of time working on is the soft skill side, which is the interpersonal side, and the building of relationships, working on building a network, having really great communication skills, speaking professionally or speaking publicly well, running a great meeting.
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are what I consider to be the soft stuff that is the hard stuff.
Is there any critiquing that goes on with the coaching? For example, most people have sent out an email that in retrospect, had they thought about it, they would not have sent it back, or had one that they would have liked to have taken back. So any critique?
Oh, that's never happened to any of us, right?
I know, right? I know. So, anything like that where they will, you'll review an email or maybe even review a speech that they gave and give some feedback on that?
Well, this is where we make one other distinction, and that is there's a distinction between coaching and consulting.
Mm-hmm.
And people who do pure coaching don't do a lot of what you just described, where they are editing emails or critiquing speeches.
Mm-hmm.
Pure coaching is provoking thought and helping the client essentially become aware of his or her own challenges and taking on actions that can help them fix those. It's really hard for a coach not to get into the consulting realm. Coaching is, I know the process, but you're the expert in you. Consulting is, I know the answer and I'll tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is a little bit of a difference between
mm-hmm.
those two.
Mm-hmm.
And most coaches will get into the arena of some consulting every now and then. But that's not usually why people hire a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And as an example, I do work with people on their resumes, and I'll say to them, hey, I'm not coaching right now. I'm putting my consulting hat on, and here are 3 things that you should be working on with this resume. So, yes, it filters in.
Okay. Okay, thanks for the clarification on that. Now, I'd like to talk about your latest book, Inbox Detox, and the Habit of Email Excellence. Could you give us a brief overview of the components in that book and the key takeaways?
Well, if we had 2 hours, I could probably really explain it really well. But it is, the title of the book is important because what happens with the way people manage their email is they have developed probably bad habits. If they're frustrated that email is taking up too much of their time, they may be contributing to it themselves. So the book essentially, the first part of the book talks about why email has gotten to be such a productivity drain on individuals and businesses. The second part of the book is I actually came up with the 12 steps to curing your email addiction, which is 12 steps that help you manage your incoming email. The third part of the book is how to send great emails that will be read. And the fourth part of the book is on email etiquette.
Okay.
And so it's a useful guide for people who are struggling under the dearth of emails that they are having to process every day.
Yes.
And it's a little humorous, too.
Well, it's definitely something that is needed. I know, my business box is always a challenge, but the personal box as well. Last year, I cleaned out 19,000 unread emails in my Google, and I'm up to probably like 15,000 again, just emails that don't require action, but they're there. They're sending it to you. So that sounds like a book that I and a lot of people need to read. Now, with the last 60 seconds that we have, this is what I would like for you to do. I'd like for you to convey one central theme, thought, or message to the listeners so that if they didn't receive or get anything else from the interview, this is the message that I want to deliver to them. Can you do that?
Well, I need to think about that one just for a second. The single message that I have lived by myself, and it is actually a quote from Maya Angelou, who was our national poet. Mm-hmm. And this has to do with attitude. And our attitude can really impact how well we go through life. And her quote, and I'm probably going to butcher it just a little bit, but her quote basically says, if you don't like something, you have only two choices. You can either change it or change your attitude towards it. Otherwise, you will continue to not like it. And so as you go through life wanting happiness and wanting to take charge of your attitude, making the choice of addressing an issue and trying to impact it and change it, or addressing your attitude towards it, towards accepting it and enjoying it, can be very useful for your personal happiness and personal success.
That is a very powerful quote and insight. And even if it wasn't word for word, that the message was well received. The unfortunate thing is that so many people are now actually, they like the toxic attitude, or they like not liking something, or they enjoy hating something. It's almost like this drug that's out there of just hating something is good. It's okay.
Yeah, and as Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you?
I love it. Excellent response. Now,
yes.
if the listeners would like to get in contact with your organization and learn more about your speaking business, your coaching business, and how they might be able to engage with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
My primary website is Marsha Egan, MarshaEgan.com. And there's another website on the email side of things called inboxdetox.com. So any of those will get them to some of our great resources.
Okay, excellent. Well, Marsha, thank you so much for coming on the show. That was very insightful and powerful information that you shared with our listeners, and we appreciate it.
Well, I'm happy to have joined you.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.